Okay, Council, welcome everyone to the June 5th, 2018 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. And I hope you've all voted. If you haven't voted, you still have time and you can actually go right next door in order to vote. We're starting off with the invocation, and the invocation tonight will be led by Pastor Danny Daniels from the Arbor Christian Fellowship. Welcome, Pastor Daniels.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pastor Daniels, I'd like to include into a longtime servant of the city of Lake Forest, Ms. Catherine McCullough, lost her husband, Chris McCullough. If you could please include that in your prayers.
She's helped us with our food bank as we serve people in the community. Thank you. Heavenly Father, we come before you today at this time for this council meeting. I pray that you give wisdom, courage, and we thank you for the leadership that we have in our city. We thank you for so many of the great things that are going on. I pray that the wisdom continues and all issues talked out, communicated. But we thank you that we can come into this building, and I as a pastor am blessed seeing that sign that says, "In God we trust." And so we trust in you. I thank you for this opportunity. I pray all this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And thank you for all your work, Pastor. The Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by Colonel Cagley. Next, we have a closed session report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. The council voted 4-0 to direct the city attorney to join a filing of a joint test claim regarding to unfunded state water quality control mandates. That is all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. This is a rare opportunity. Normally, the city attorney has nothing to report. So we're happy that you had something to report tonight. And now we have the report from our student liaison. Here she is. Hi, Sarah. Welcome back.
Hi. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Sarah Dahlstrom here reporting to you on the past and upcoming events at El Toro High School. In sports news, El Toro's very own Malia Medley, both varsity soccer and track star, was named Orange County's Athlete of the Month. Way to go, Malia. In ASB news, this past Saturday was our prom dance that took place at the Mission in San Juan Capistrano. It was a beautiful venue, and the juniors and seniors had an awesome time. Recently at El Toro, last week, our ECP, Early College Prep seniors, graduated with their associate's degrees from Irvine Valley College. Way to go, seniors. Also, Senior Week is coming fast. While the rest of El Toro will be taking their finals next week, the seniors will be going to Disneyland on Monday, having a field day on Tuesday, senior breakfast Wednesday, and finally Thursday, June 14th, is their graduation ceremony. Congratulations to all of our seniors. And finally, tonight will be my last meeting. I'm happy to announce my successor for next year is Stefano Polito, who is here today. Congrats, Stefano. It's been an honor serving you guys as your city council liaison. Thank you so much for being so welcoming. I've truly had an amazing time. That's all I have for tonight. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great evening. And as always, go Chargers.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Why don't you stay there?
Okay.
We have a gift for you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
And do you Insta or do you Snap?
Both.
You want to do one of them? You got your...
Oh, okay.
You got your phone here?
I have it in my purse.
I don't know what it means. Okay.
Should we take a selfie?
Oh, absolutely. Let's show the plaque. We have a very nice plaque.
Aww.
We really appreciate the work in the students keeping us in touch with what's going on. It's really, sometimes it's the best thing that happens at a city council meeting. You're going to tell them how to... Oh, you're going to do it. It's your phone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been asked, do you want to dab as well?
Oh my goodness! If you can do it, you want me to watch you do it?
What is that?
You do it. We can both do it.
Let we both do it
Okay,
together,
okay,
right?
okay. Okay, ready? Do you know how to do it? We got it? Oh, no. Okay, okay. That's very fun.
Here's a certificate.
Thank you so much.
And we heard you're going to IVC.
I am.
And so we got you a present
Oh.
in here for college. Most of our kids from El Toro High School go into college. We're really proud of them.
Ooh, thank you. That's so nice. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
I'm supposed to remind us that the voting booths are open next door, so we probably should do like it used to do in the 60s and all like that instead of clapping. I think they call them beatniks. Okay, moving right. Oh, we have a presentation from Cox Communications. Great.
Mayor and members of the City Council, per the Council's request, we have a representative here from Cox Communications. Please let me introduce Ms. Kristen Camigula. She is the Government Affairs Manager for Cox Communications.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome, Kristen.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mayor and Council members, my name is Kristen Camulia, Government Affairs Manager for Cox Communications. I'm here today to provide you an update on Cox's network upgrades in your city. I'll start out by sharing some information on Cox's community involvement and then provide an overview of the current industry landscape. I'll then go into details about Cox's plan to bring faster speed, higher bandwidth, and more reliability to our network through a robust investment plan. And lastly, I'll touch on what it means for future applications. Oh, did I not turn it on? There we go. We'll get this. I'm supposed to be the one from the tech company, right? There we go. All right. In the last 10 years, Cox has invested more than $15 billion into infrastructure upgrades to deliver best-in-class video, phone, and high-speed internet service to homes and businesses in our service territory. As part of our company culture, Cox is deeply committed to being an active and engaged in the communities that we serve. That's why you'll find our employees on, doing things like serving on local nonprofit boards and volunteering in the community. It's also why we provide corporate giving with a community outreach focus on youth and education initiatives. In 2017, Cox's in-kind and direct cash contributions totaled more than $70 million. Cox is also a leader in customer satisfaction, earning 36 J.D. Power & Associates awards, including 10 consecutive wins for residential phone and 9 for awards in business services. In addition, Cox has connected more than 350,000 homes to the Internet since 2012 through our Connect to Compete low-income access program, most for the very first time ever. So this slide is intended to provide some perspective on the changing landscape of Internet usage. In the United States, Internet usage is doubling every 2 years. You guys, that's huge. By 2020, we anticipate there will be over 50 billion connected devices. By 2022, there will be 50 devices in every home that are sharing that home's Internet services. At a time when customers are streaming more content than ever over the Internet, they're also adding things to their home, like Alexa, smart lights, smart thermostats, refrigerators that keep grocery lists, cameras that monitor their pets, and so on and so on and so on. And when we look to the not-so-distant future, we'll start seeing things like connected vehicles, telemedicine, and smart cities becoming more mainstream. What the public needs to understand is that all of those devices are using bandwidth at unprecedented rates, and it's only proliferating. And while the needs of our customers are being met today, Cox has an eye toward the future, and that's why we're engaged in a $10 billion project right now to revolutionize our broadband network. We're calling the project Network Transformation. It's a 5-year, $10 billion investment in the network, and before we're done, the Comprehensive Network Transformation Initiative will stretch to $20 billion over a decade. It's among the largest initiatives in our company's history, and it involves all business units. As you could imagine, a change like this, with this magnitude, certainly transforms our business forever. This complex project, I have the unenviable task of trying to describe this complex project, so bear with me. I'll do my best, but there really are two basic components of the project. The first component of the project is what we call migrating to N, or Node plus Zero architecture. So these two diagrams are going to help me explain my concepts, so follow along closely. The diagrams on the slide are intended to be very simplistic ideas of what our network looks today versus what it's going to look like in the future. The blue dot represents a hub site, and the yellow line represents fiber optics. Today, our fiber backbone represents more than 90% of the path between our head end and the customer. The purple dot represents a node, and it's at the node where the feed it converts to from fiber to coax, which extends into individual homes, which are supposed to be represented by those green dots. So those little arrows on the top one represent active components like amplifiers and other equipment. So now looking to the second diagram, you see that N plus 0 entails splitting the nodes into several smaller nodes. This will bring fiber closer to customers, increasing capacity per customer and reducing congestion. In addition, by reducing the equipment along the line, like amplifiers, reliability is improved, and there are fewer potential points of failure. Today, a node serves approximately 400 to 500 customers. Under N plus 0, a single node will serve only about 40 to 50 customers. That means there is a whole lot more bandwidth capacity provided to each home. This work involves equipment changes, digging, and some replacement of plant in the streets. And our company will work very closely with your city on permitting, etc. But really, the impact is quite minimal in comparison to the magnitude of the project. The second part of the project involves the deployment of the latest cable broadband standard, which is called DOCSIS 3.1, which allows for the addition of high bandwidth data transfer to an existing coax cable TV system. It's really complicated, but really what's important for you to know about DOCSIS 3.1 is that it will allow access to gigabit speeds and beyond to all customers over the existing coax network that we have in place today. Cox's residential gigabit service is called Gigablast, and today it's available to over 40% of Cox customers. Through our investment in DOCSIS 3.1 and N plus 0, more than 99% of our customers will have access to gigabit residential speeds before the end of 2019. And the investments don't stop there. We're investing in our products and services as well, including our new Contour cable platform and new products like panoramic Wi-Fi, which improves the in-home Wi-Fi experience with next-generation equipment. This significant investment by our company will not only ensure the delivery of state-of-the-art speed throughout homes and businesses, but it will be the basis for powering smart homes, smart businesses, and smart cities today and into the future. Through Cox Home Life, Cox is delivering amazing smart home applications from automated locks, lights, and video monitoring. And through Cox Business Security Solutions, we're doing the same for small businesses. But did you know that Cox is also actively working collaboratively with cities in our footprint to develop and deliver smart city solutions as well? And Cox has some built-in advantages in this space, since not only do we manage the network, but we already have a very long-standing, trusted relationship as a city partner, community partner. So Cox has become an end-to-end solutions provider for smart city applications that will combine people, connected devices, data, and processes to improve city operations and the citizen experience. And we're only getting started. So I do have some flyers for your council that describe in more detail both our smart city offerings as well as more information about the network transformation. With me, I have Erickson Rodriguez from our construction team to answer any technical questions you might have. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Council?
With all that you're adding, is that going to take any street repairs, or are you bringing new cables in our streets? Obviously, that's something we're concerned about as city council members.
Yes, well, good evening, all. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome.
So yes, what we're looking at right now, we're in the process of utilizing our existing infrastructure. Luckily, when we built out the areas, we have a lot of conduit availability. So the fiber we're deploying is actually new technology as well. We actually have a 288 count fiber. I don't know if everybody remembers how big it used to be. It used to be about the size of a baseball bat. Now this fiber is the size of a pen. So we're actually able to utilize the existing infrastructure without damaging anything. Now that being said, over time we have other MSOs that are out there that are performing construction as well, and we may run into situations where we may have to pothole and repair some of our conduits. But what we've identified so far, there's no major construction happening at the moment on the streets.
Well, that's great news for all that we're getting, so thank you so much.
Most of the activity will happen on our infrastructure, replacing node for node, like for like at the node, as well as a lot of this comes at our master telecommunications center itself.
Thank you.
I have a question. When are we expected to have Lake Forest completely done with the change to DOCSIS 3.0?
Sure. The nodes, again, they comprise about 400 to 500 residents at this time, and we've got nodes throughout our service territories. They're being prioritized based on utilization rate. So that means that we will see investments and improvements in Lake Forest and kind of piecemeal, because Cox is looking at it from our entire network and managing network capacity. So for Lake Forest, our first nodes are actually, I think we have 6 slated this year in Q3 and Q4. We will work with your staff with more information about the locations of those. But it's about a 5-year project. So over the course of 5 years, it will continue to improve, and literally the residents, the homes in these areas will see immediate improvement in terms of speed and capacity.
Wow.
And staff will get that information to us as soon as it's available, because we have Facebook sites where people would like to keep track of when their areas are going to be updated, so that would be very useful to have.
Fantastic. We'll have maps and information that we can get. Yeah.
Perfect.
One of the things I notice, and this is not limited to Cox, is just about every time they do a slurry seal or they replace a street in my neighborhood, within 6 months, AT&T or Cox or somebody has come by and cut the street and done their repairs. Do you guys work with the city and the HOAs to find out what their slurry seal and street repairs are, so it's better timed when those things, or you do?
We absolutely do our very best. We're actively monitoring all, street cuts, moratoriums, slurry seal projects, etc. It's a difficult thing to manage, because if your internet goes out and you need a new cut or something, I mean, these are dynamic things that happen, and people need service like yesterday. And so to manage the demands of our customers, which is immediate, with a 7-year city improvement plan, they don't always coincide. And so we do our very best to not only coordinate but also to mitigate any kind of additional cuts that aren't necessary. Impacts to the community are our number one concern.
Yes.
As you replace the nodes, placing the nodes in, is there any interruption service to the residents of the community?
That's a great question. There is. We're actually working on active plant. That means we have phone services, we have internet, cable TV. So we actually do the migration in the middle of the day. So we have 2 4-hour windows between 7 and 11 and 12 and 4, because we want to make sure most of the time most of the residents are at work or at school. So we work with the city at that time so we can get the proper traffic control, because at that time all major construction has been completed and we're just doing the migration in a 2-day span.
And so when you do that, that's obviously affecting 400 to 500 homes, because that's what a node will carry, right?
So no. So during the 2-day plan, it does affect the 400 to 500 plan home, but we break it down into the windows to take half of that node. We don't want to affect all the customers in an area, so we break it up in 2 separate days.
Awesome. Thank you.
They're rolling, and so any individual customer impact will be approximately 2 hours without service. However, we do have a very, very robust customer notification program. It includes a number of notifications. They will not be caught off guard, including door walks and door hangers, etc.
Well, as a satisfied Cox customer, I know that you guys do great work, and so I'm looking forward to the upgraded services. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay, well, then, I just wanted to say thank you. Cox, if you didn't know, is right here in Lake Forest, so we're really happy that you're here with us.
It made for a good commute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the program is our public comments. As a reminder, if you would like to participate, please fill out a blue speaker card, turn it into the city clerk, and your name will be called. Madam Clerk, have we any requests to speak?
Yes, Your Honor. Patricia Pycook, followed by Bob Holtzclaw.
Yeah, hi, Pat.
Hi. Mr. Mayor, City Council members, I'm Patricia Pycook, resident of Lake Forest for almost 40 years. I have traveled up and down El Toro Road and Lake Forest Drive, and for the life of me, I can't understand the inconsistency of the bus stops. We have some beautiful bus stops that are concrete, and they say Lake Forest. And then just down the street a little, we have one of those metal. And I just can't understand why we have one of each, sometimes on the same block. For instance, I was thinking the one on Lake Forest in Geronimo was because of the children who might be wanting to take the bus home. But adjacent to the school, it's a concrete one. So I don't expect anything to be done, but I would like to understand the reason for the inconsistency. Our islands are so beautiful and everything is so pristine, and then we have this inconsistency. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You think there's a reason behind it, huh? Tom, do we have I know we don't control the bus stops, but do we have any say in what the bus stops look like?
We do. There is some reason behind them. There's also some history that I can't tell you about, but they're based primarily on usage. So the higher usage places have better stops. We have some of the concrete stops. If you remember, this is going back a few years now, we were looking at how often we maintain them, how often we send people out there, and that was based on usage. And then OCTA over time has changed the bus routes and changed them around and stuff like that. But if I can, Mr. Mike McConaughey can raise his hand there real quick. If you want to talk to him during or after the meeting or right now, go out in the hallway. He's our maintenance manager, and he can explain to you in more detail how that works.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next.
Bob Holtzclaw, followed by Randy Johnson.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, City Council, I'm just giving you my vector control report. By the way, I've got some little leaflets out there next to the coffee machine there, and it's about dogs. If anybody has a pet dog or anything like that, just showing about the problems with mosquitoes and heartworm for dogs and things like that. You'd be welcome to pick up one. This month, we discussed mosquitoes at our meeting, and we have found 4 mosquitoes in Huntington Beach that tested positive for West Nile. Now, Huntington Beach is a faraway place, but mosquitoes have been known to travel 25 miles. So, we're still in that realm, but it's only 4 mosquitoes. But, that's something that, something a little bit concerned about. How much water does it need to breed mosquitoes? Well, we picked this up at Santa Ana. Now, what happened at the home over there, they have a barbecue pit, and everybody throws their beer bottles, the beer caps, behind the barbecue pit. And, of course, the sprinklers, water the garden back there. This right here was breeding mosquitoes, a little bottle cap. And inside were larvae from mosquitoes. So this is why we stress that everybody should, if you have a flower pot or anything in your backyard that's got the little water catcher on the bottom, please dump it, because you never know, when you're going to breed mosquitoes, even out here. We're on a slopes, we're not on really a stressful area for mosquitoes, but we do have the problem. With little things like that. We have the tiger mosquito, which can lay its eggs in dry land, and the eggs can last for a year before it gets water, and then it can turn into larvae. We have vector control right now. I see my yellow light is on. One other thing here is they're asking the HOAs if they can put traps around through the area, and everybody belongs to an HOA. Dwight Robinson and Colonel Cagley, you got to pass because Lake 2 is going to volunteer to put some traps around. So we're covered there. That's just about it. I guess my yellow light is coming on, so I just wanted to close with empty anything in the backyard that has any kind of water in there. I sure appreciate it, and that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and was it last month that you gave us that very interesting video about the West Nile virus and what it does to people?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it opened my eyes.
Yeah, that's a very interesting little film.
Yeah. Next.
Randy Johnson.
Welcome.
Well, good evening, Council. Randy Johnson. I'm here tonight to talk about the homeless issue that's affecting everybody. And, of course, I was a little concerned about them putting the homeless shelter up there in Santiago Canyon at the library, 200 beds, and luckily that got shot down. What I'm concerned about, there's a meeting coming up on June 13th. And, of course, they're focusing on South Orange County. They're telling us we have to have homeless shelter down here in order to house the homeless people and to give them free services. Okay. Now, we're a conservative community. We always have been. Okay, we protect our own here. We protect our own from this type of activity that goes on throughout the rest of the county. Santa Ana is a sanctuary city. They invite poverty. 40% of their city are illegal foreigners. They invite those people in. They drive down the wage, they increase the rents, and also they take resources from our citizens and from our lawful immigrants. Okay? So now, they're mad because all the people who are impoverished are in their city, so they want to dump them on us. They want to dump their problems on South Orange County that has historically protected our own from this type of activity. And then we have an activist judge. And this guy, who's not even elected, he's an unelected official, he threatens by what I call a TRO to suspend city ordinances that we can't protect our own. He's threatening to lift vagrancy laws, anti-camping laws, so these homeless people can come down here and camp in our parks and sleep on our sidewalks. Why is nobody challenging this? This Jones decision they're talking about, I've never heard of it before. Has there been a federal judge in the history of the United States who has done something like this? Not that I know of. I've never heard of it before. Why isn't this man being challenged? He's not a king. And we should govern our own city laws and determine our own fate when it comes to this type of thing, and not let some outsider come in here and dump all these homeless people on Lake Forest. I expect you, Mayor Gardner, to protect us. And if you don't, there will be consequences.
Thank you for your comments. City Attorney, how much can I talk about in terms of the joint cities?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, Council, you can certainly talk about that. That's a public document and information. You can talk about that.
Okay. Well, a couple of things I spent 2 hours today with meeting with the homeless liaison people, and I could go on for hours talking about the subject. Just a couple of comments to what you said. The current lawsuit that Judge Carter is involved in doesn't involve the city of Lake Forest. It involves 4 cities up north, Santa Ana being one of them. So we are in no immediate danger or imminent danger of a TRO, a temporary restraining order, affecting us here in Lake Forest. So let's not get too nervous. On the other hand, we're developing a committee, we're developing checklists for our agencies, we're doing a census. We have teamed up with 6 other cities to defend any legal action coming our way as a result of the homeless lawsuit if it spills over to us. At the moment, it hasn't spilled over to us. So we're actually very active. I must spend 20 hours a week myself just on this topic alone. I know Deborah's some days, the whole day is spent on meetings on this. That being said, we do have homeless people in the city who are our people, not Santa Ana people, and I couldn't agree with you more. We're not going to take Santa Ana people, but we do have people, and we could be doing a better job, and we are working toward doing a better job, but we certainly have no intentions of taking homeless people from other cities here. And why would you, homeless people, they're already in trouble. Why would you take them from a city where they live and they have resources and put them down here? It seems like you're picking on the most vulnerable people. So we are very active on it, and we'll continue to be active. Next.
Your Honor, we've had a second request from Mr. Holtzclaw to speak again.
Oh, on vector control? No, just... You want to speak as a person now? Okay. Could you put on another hat? Okay, put on there. Now you can speak as a person. Bob represents the city at the vector control meetings.
And Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, this would go beyond the 3 minutes, even though it's as a person as opposed to vector control. So it just requires the council to allow for that to happen.
Okay. In the future, when he wants to do report, should we put that in a presentation and then kind of isolate? Then he can be a person and a representative?
That's the best way to do it, to allow him to have more than 3 minutes for vector control.
Fine.
And then to allow him to speak as Bob Holtzclaw for his 3 minutes.
Okay, so at the moment, do you want that by consensus or by vote?
The mayor actually has the ability to dictate procedural issues. If the council disagrees with you, then they can override your ruling.
Okay, well, I'm going to let the person, Bob Holtzclaw, talk unless...
I promise I won't be over 3 minutes. Okay. Mr. Mayor, City Council, one thing I just want to piggyback on what was just said here. Most of the people that were up there in Silverado Canyon were not illegal aliens. They were homeless people, drug addicts, people with mental, problems and whatever. I know we have, illegal aliens and things like that going on. When we went to the cleanup through Aliso Creek, those were day laborers, some of them, because I went through there and I was picking up Spanish papers and magazine, and there's a couple mattresses down there, and matter of fact, they even had a jacuzzi, not a jacuzzi, a Weber, barbecue. I wish they had it in a jacuzzi. But yeah, they had a Weber barbecue, a couple small little barbecue things out there. And 2 years ago, both the mayor and I went down to the other end, and I says, this is this is a fire hazard, because something's going to happen with them lighting fires down there. Sure enough, I went down to the other end first. All the big logs over there were all on fire. They've burned up, and you can see the charred remains there. So, lo and behold, they did set a fire. But with all that grass out there, you're in for a big problem, because you have homes on Lake Forest side, you have an apartment and other buildings on the other side in the Mission Viejo area. Now, that stuff can go up like crazy, and I think our fire department could probably verify that, because someone put out that fire way back when. I don't know when the actual fire happened. But anyhow, that's one thing. One other thing we have is, a while back we brought up this idea about limiting the trucks on Lake Forest Drive, because it's very noisy and we're trying to cut down on traffic. We've got big trucks going down Lake Forest Drive, and when you're going in the morning or in the afternoon going to work or coming home, it slows down traffic. And with all the developments we have here, we've got, Lake Forest Drive is one big parking lot, and also Bake. I'd love to see it diverted to Bake Parkway, because everything on Lake Forest Drive can be diverted over to Bake, and they can, even the Rouse up there, can go up to Tabruco and, come in from that way. It's just creating a lot of traffic, and you ought to hear it sometimes in the morning. When you got a big 18-wheeler coming down your street. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. About 2 months ago, there was a woman who lives on Bake Parkway, and she said, why don't you put the trucks on Lake Forest Drive? So, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, well, it's more of a commercial road than Lake Forest Drive is. You got houses on both sides of the street, where the other way you've got commercial buildings all on the other side of Bake. Thank you.
Irvine, so.
Okay, now, and I should have said this earlier, but let me remind you that the Traffic and Parking Commission is now accepting applications. So, and we expect it to be up and functioning by, the second meeting in July? The second meeting in July? Oh, by August? Okay, slower than I want. And those will be up for a month. So you've got, if you're interested, please go to the city's website and fill out an application. It's the Traffic and Parking Commission. How about Facebook? Do we have one from Facebook?
We do have one, Your Honor. Rhonda Bower-Greiner, comment for council. Move the parked cars off of the streets. Water sits in the gutters that can't be swept away, and it is a breeding ground for mosquitoes.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. We are busy. We added just, 3 months ago, a parking enforcement officer to be going around and looking for the cars. And what did we do? Triple the number of 3-day violation? Did we double the number of 3-day violations? So we're working on that. We're working on getting a new street sweeping system by which we have enforcement of the street sweeping so that we get the cars. They're often abandoned cars sitting there. So you can help because as the chief knows, he gets a picture from me a couple times a week. You can help. If you see a car in your neighborhood, it's been there 3 days, notify the police to come by. Or if you see a trailer, an oversized trailer, on your street, you can help a lot by notifying the police. We have picked up the enforcement a lot, but it continues to be a problem, and we continue to deal with it. Thank you for your question. Any more Facebook? No. That's it? Any more public?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, then moving...
Your Honor, may I make a comment to Mr. Johnson? If you've not read it, look up the Orange County Grand Jury most recent report on homelessness. It's called Where There's a Will, There's a Way. It's very interesting, informative reading. You might find it worthwhile.
Okay, we're now at the Warrant Register. All matters listed on the Warrant Register are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items be removed from the Warrant Register for separate action. Have there been any requests to pull an item from the Warrant Register?
No, Your Honor.
No? Colleagues?
I'll move.
Second that.
Well, that was fast. Okay. We have a vote?
That motion carries unanimously.
That's the fastest we ever did a Warrant Register in the 4 years I've been up here. Let's keep it going. All right. Then we... consent calendar, miscellaneous, all matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. This is just what I said. Can I just say ditto? Do I have to go through the whole thing again? Ditto. Do we have any requests to remove a consent item?
Yes, Your Honor. Item number 15.
15. Okay. And colleagues, did you want to remove any?
Move the remainder.
Number 14.
14. I got 14 and 15 going once.
Remove the remainder.
I'll second.
Okay, please vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 14, removed by a council member.
Mostly it's just a question, Your Honor. Several council sessions back, a member of the Lake Forest 2 community, Sonny Mopar, requested that parts of Geronimo Lane be closed down or John Road rather, be closed during the 4th of July for parking. Was that part of this plan, or is that something separate?
I think that's a separate one, and if I remember correctly, we decided it was a good idea, but it wasn't enough time this year to be able to get all the police and the arrangements and street closures and city
Correct.
manager.
It was going to be very challenging because of all of the effort we put toward the 4th of July parade. To have basically a second shift to be able to work this extra event was going to be very challenging. So we put forth some estimated costs of what we thought it would take, but ultimately we didn't believe we had the resources to cover that as well as what we're already doing on the 4th of July.
Thank you.
All right, so it's not a question of there wasn't enough time to do it, it was too expensive to do. Okay, thank you. Then with that,
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, vote, please. Item number 15, agreement with the County of Orange for law enforcement services, removed by a member of the public.
Randy Johnson.
Welcome back. Hello, Council. Randy Johnson again. You know, I'm really concerned about the escalating police costs in the city of Lake Forest. I mean, you shake your head, Mr. Gardner, but you didn't do anything this last time. You didn't do anything to stop it. Before you were elected, you were writing columns on it all the time. You protested the first time, and then every time you've got a big, huge increase since, you stuck your tail between your legs. You haven't done anything. What happened to the old Gardner we used to know? Yeah, it's true. So anyway, my comment is this, all right? Now, I don't mind giving the police their fair share of money. I really don't. I really don't. Do they have a hard job? Yeah. Relatively speaking, yeah, they do. There are jobs that are much more dangerous than being police officers. Trust me on that. There are, all right? But they don't get paid nearly close to what a police officer gets paid. In fact, being a police officer is not even one of the most 10 dangerous jobs in the country, according to the data, according to the Forbes and everybody else that comes out with these statistics. I don't mind paying them their fair share. I really don't. I know it's a hard job. However, we're paying them too much money, all right? I remember, seems like just yesterday, we were paying them in the high 12s or the low 13 millions. Now it's over 17 million. Have we gotten one extra police officer on account of that? Hell no. No, you know what it's for? It's for police salaries and benefits. Every 3 years, they get another huge increase, 9, 10%. Even during the huge recession, they didn't take a cut. They didn't take a cut in benefits. They didn't get a raise, but they didn't take a cut like everybody else. Everybody else was getting laid off their jobs, taking huge cuts in their salaries, losing their jobs. Not with the cops. You know, they kept their jobs and kept their benefits and kept their big salaries. Nothing happened, okay? Now we're over 17 million. Where does this end? What are you going to do about it? You know? Should we have a representative up at the county government maybe sitting in on these negotiations? Is that a possibility? If we're going to get charged, shouldn't we have a representative there? What do you expect the Board of Supervisors to do? Okay, when Supervisor Doe gets paid $86,000 from the police union, how do you think he's going to vote on the next police raise? And the rest of them surely are getting money from the police unions too. How do you think they're going to vote? Represent us. We want a representative up there representing us. We want to know why these costs continue to go up for salaries and benefits. I don't mind if we add extra police officers. That's one thing, okay? But they're not doing that. It's all salaries and benefits is what we're talking about here. At some point, it's got to stop. It's got to stop. You've got to represent us, the taxpayers, okay? This will go on forever. What do they say? In the next 5 years, we'll be paying well over $20 million a year for our police services? Come on. Come on, folks.
Okay, thank you for your comment. When my tail wasn't between my legs, I was busy working with the police chief on costs. We're working with exploring code enforcement, civilian code enforcement as one substitute, and we've partnered with how many? 12 other cities? 12 other cities. We've partnered with 12 other cities and using Matrix Consulting, who are a firm who specialize in analyzing police services, and we're expecting a report back from them by the end of the year showing that the ways in which we can save money. It's a problem that we're not the only ones facing this problem, and quite frankly, other cities, 50% of their budget. For us, it's 36%, which is high, and you're right, it's gone from 12 to 13 to 17. So we're in less trouble than other cities, but all the cities are in trouble, and we're exploring. I did, again, when my tail wasn't tripping my leg, go speak to the mayor of Irvine to see if they were interested in partnering with us, and the mayor was not. So...
And Mayor Gardner, I was with you at that meeting.
Oh, that's all right.
It was substantially more.
Well, he didn't have the full cost for us, but he thought if he did, it would be more. Yeah. And we never got to that point. The other point he made, which was interesting, was he said, "Can I tell that about the safety?" Or should I not?
How you recall it? I don't know where you're going with this.
Okay. I don't think I'm speaking out of school, but he also said, in addition to the financial, he said, we have a reputation for being one of the safest cities in the nation. If we took you on, there's no upside for us. You might tarnish our reputation. So it's not only it's financial, and now that's curious because as the chief and I know, maybe we're the only ones know, our crime rate is actually less than Irvine's, which is a funny situation. Yeah, and again, we've done well, particularly under Chief Valentine. We've never been as relatively crime-free or had lower crime rates than we have in the last few years. We used to show up 9th and 10th and worse, and now I think last year we were 5th, and the year before we were 3rd or something like that. So we're doing real well in our crime rate of whatever it is, 9 or 10. Per capita is actually less than Irvine. So we all know about it, we're all concerned with it, and we are trying to do whatever we can. You look like you're chafing at the bit to say something.
I just have a couple questions. I think, as I've mentioned when this contract's come up over each year, my focus is that the department's going to be spending more time, energy, and resources on technology. I've used the example on a number of occasions that, 100 years ago you all were riding horses, right? And then moved to what it might have been bicycles, motorcycles, cars, so forth. Now we're seeing a lot more technology, come into play that can help you combat crime as much as possible in town. And if we were still riding horses, there'd have to be literally hundreds of you in a town like ours just to be able to respond in time, or there'd have to be beat cops, in every corner, basically. And so I'm just kind of curious what technological advancements the department's kind of focused on, what areas right now. And I had a couple of specific questions that I've heard in a few different, usually bigger municipalities, some of the larger cities in the country. Things like gunshot triangulation. So they basically have, I want to say it's like a speaker system sort of thing. I don't know exactly what it is, but a gunshot is heard through some system out there, and they can kind of triangulate down to, I don't know whether it's a 50-foot radius or a 100-foot radius, whatever. I'm wondering if any of that is implemented anywhere. And if you don't have answers to this today, that's fine. That's one issue. Another one that seems to pop up quite a bit, and if that technology is out there, I'd be really interested in looking at what it might take to acquire it for our town, would be to try to do something similar with fireworks. I don't think we have a lot of gunshots going off in Lake Forest, but each and every one of us hear, fireworks, especially this time of year, but, in many times of the year, waking up infants, causing a lot of disruption at night, and I'm all for, people enjoying 4th of July celebrations, enjoying celebrating, the freedom this country has, but, at some point, one person's freedom is impacting another's, and that's where I have a big problem with things like that. So just kind of curious what technological development there is, and then that was just kind of one of my specific questions that if you can answer tonight or at a later date, that'd be fine.
Mayor and council members, I'd be happy to address some of those. First off, as far as some of the current technology that's underway within the Sheriff's Department, the biggest one would be what we call field-based reporting. And that is live and operational here in Southeast Operations that affects Lake Forest. And that's basically a paperless reporting system. So in the old days, a deputy would go to a residence, take a crime report, and then go park their car or go back to the station and handwrite that report. Then that progressed to typing it up on a laptop or something and printing it out. And you're still printing out that paper. It gets approved by a sergeant and maybe kicked back to the deputy for corrections. And there's this trail that it follows throughout the department before it gets submitted to our records division and scanned in. Well, what we're doing now, it's field-based reporting. It's paperless. So deputy writes the report. He hits transmit. It goes right to a sergeant. When a sergeant approves it, it gets disseminated to everywhere in the department it needs to go. And it's much more quicker and efficient. If there's corrections that need to be made, it goes right back to the deputy. So it's putting the deputy back out in the field faster and reduces the support staff as well. Another thing is what I just sent you an email today. The Sheriff's Department it's been a little long time getting here from when we first talked about this a couple of years ago. But the Sheriff's Department is now live with Crimemapping.com and partnered with them and TriTech. And so any jurisdiction within the Sheriff's Department, you can pull up any city, any address, and look at what's happening within your neighborhood. Once again, that's reports of crimes. It's not calls for service, so it's a little different from the blotter, but that's some ways in which technology is being used. Another thing you've talked about in the past, Councilmember Robertson, is body-worn cameras. So the Sheriff's Department has had several different prototypes and things in testing. We've done several of those, and we already have dash cam videos within the cars with microphones on deputies. But for a deputy to wear a body-worn camera, the things that we are waiting for is for existing companies that we're already working with to develop that software, because it's the infrastructure and the servers that cost all the money. So to try to control the cost that would be handed down to a contract city, we're trying to monitor and make sure we can put forth the best product at the best price. So those are some of the things that are in the works and being tested. As far as your gunshot triangulation, to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any of that being used out here in the Sheriff's Department jurisdiction. It would be great to be able to catch some of those people that are lighting fireworks, especially around the 4th of July. As you know, we get hundreds of calls for service for that every year, and unfortunately, by the time we get there, the fireworks are dissipated and there's nobody standing around in the street, and there's very little for us to do to enforce. But we do catch a few of them every now and then. But those are some of the things that are happening on the technology front. We're always trying to be innovative and to push that information out. You have the MDCs in the cars, so the deputy can write the report in the car, they can run people out in the car. There's mapping programs and all sorts of resources that are pushed to that mobile data computer that's now it's mobile. It can be pulled out of the car and taken into a house. So while the deputy's talking to somebody, a victim or a witness, they can input that information directly in, not have to write it on a notepad and then go back and transcribe their notes. It's all being done in real time.
Thank you very much for the response. I appreciate that and very elaborate. So, is there anything that's occurring with respect to like predictive crime software out there? Not to get too like RoboCop on us here, but I'm guessing that officers for a long time have just had gut feelings about particular areas. They intuit that there's crime in particular neighborhoods on particular days of the week or times of the night. But is there anything that's going on out there from a technological standpoint that kind of helps with that?
Mayor and council members, yes. Once again, great question. The Sheriff's Department currently has a crime analysis unit, and they analyze, I get a weekly report from the previous week, and they're analyzing all the crime that's taken place in the city. They generate heat maps and areas of focus on the various types of crime, whether it's petty theft, stolen vehicles, assaults, and then that information is sent to me, reviewed by me, and then pushed out to the field deputies so they know where the hot spots of activity are occurring in the city. Another way we use the crime analysis unit is within our investigative details. If we're, let's say we have a lot of certain types of stores that are being robbed or burglarized, we'll look at the MO, the method of operation for that, and look for consistencies and try to use that predictive policing to determine the best nights to set up surveillance, best nights to where to set up that surveillance. A good example would be just recently, a couple months ago, there was an individual who was hitting all the AT&T stores, and was it AT&T? I apologize. It might have been the GameStop, so I might be getting them confused. But our predictive policing put us up in the area of Rancho Santa Margarita, and as the deputies were setting up to look for a specific type of car, before they were even set up, they saw the car drive by, which led to his apprehension and arrest. So that's ways in which we are using predictive policing. Just depends on which way. There's general information being pushed out patrol, and then specifics for your investigative details that can set up on that type of stuff.
Thank you again. And just very last question here from me. Is there any use of drones at this point? Any thought about using drones? Any pilot testing out there or anything like that? I'm just curious, and if you can't answer that, that's fine.
I believe our Reserve Bureau has been experimenting with drones in the capacity of search and rescue, but I'm not aware of anything happening at our level as far as an enforcement mechanism within the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, and I know it starts to raise privacy concerns and all those sorts of things, but it's a technology out there that I can imagine is going to be used more and more, both by those who are going to commit crimes as well as those of us who are trying to stop them. So, yeah, thank you.
Chief, could you tell people if they didn't already know, what's the website that they can look at the crime mapping?
That is crimemapping.com. Okay. There's a link already on the city's webpage.
Oh, it's on there now.
It's on Lake Forest webpage, and or you can just Google crimemapping.com. You can put in your address, put in the city, put in a zip code, and look at what's going on in your area.
Yeah, I did it this morning, and it's great. The only thing is, as you expand your map, if you're just interested in Lake Forest, you pick up all the crime in Mission Viejo. So if we could be next to a city with lower crime, that would be great.
I'm sorry, we're between Mission Viejo and Irvine.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay. One question was, as far as technology goes, is there any form of technology that the police force is looking at to do like license plate readers, to make their policing more effective instead of having to dial in and, type in license numbers? Is there a scanning system that, have police considered using?
Yes, we actually have one of those already implemented in the city. It's called an automated license plate reader. There are several cars throughout the Sheriff's Department jurisdiction that have those that automatically scan, and when they read a license plate, it comes back and will let you know if that's been reported stolen or something that matter. And then all that information is also collected in a database that we can use if we've had, let's say, a certain area that's hit with a bunch of burglaries or something like that. We can pull up that license plate reader, see where that car was, and see what license plates are in the area, and see if they belong to that area or if it's an outside person, right? And look for leads. In addition, there are some radar trailers that have license plate readers on them as well, that you can put those in strategic places, and it'll record all those license plates as they drive by. Good. So, yeah, that's technology that's already in use.
Great. My other question was, as far as the position, and I know how dangerous it is to be a police officer. In your opinion, what is the most dangerous thing that a Lake Forest police officer faces? Is it possible motorists accidentally hitting, a police officer while they're directing traffic, or, is there, a problem with people drawing weapons? What's the most dangerous thing that a police officer generally faces in our city?
That's kind of a tough question to ask or to answer, to put in one specific answer. I would say whether you're in Lake Forest or anywhere in the Sheriff's Department or anywhere in law enforcement, the job itself is inherently dangerous because of the unknown factors. Every time you walk up and stop a car, you don't know who you're stopping. You don't know what that person's intentions are. Every time you go to a family disturbance, you don't know what you're walking into. Every time you're out on a traffic accident and you're focused on one thing, you don't know if all the cars driving around you are paying attention to what you're doing. So there are inherently many dangers that pop up all the time, that are a daily encounter for a sheriff's deputy. So to try to focus on one thing, I would be doing everyone a disservice to do that. There's all sorts of crime. It runs the gamut. We know that property crime is our biggest issue here in Lake Forest, but there's lots of associated factors that go with property crime, from narcotics users to homelessness to organized crews and gangs that come down here to commit those types of things. So just about every call for service has that risk of being a dangerous call for a deputy.
Now, I know we've met in the past a few times and talked about the police contract, and we've talked about the city expanding in population, and we've talked about how many officers the police force is estimating that we need in order to be able to effectively police the city with our growing population. Can you review those numbers real briefly with us? I believe it's like two to four police officers.
Yes, currently a few data through 2016, I believe. We conducted a workload study for the city, and based on the workload, that's calls for service, time to take people to jail, write reports, the time you spend on a car stop, it's the amount of time that takes to do the workload that's here. We came back that we needed potentially up to 4 additional deputies to handle the workload. And we've been working with the city manager's office and analyzing that workload, and I know we discussed things in the strategic plan of potentially adding 2 deputies next fiscal year to help handle that workload and curtail that.
Thank you.
Yeah, although that's true, most of the homes that we're adding and the new people we're adding are not high crime generating people. So,
but we don't know that for sure. There could be domestic violence situations. That's not a crime.
No,
that
we don't know their
imagine with,
individual names on it, but given the demographics, it's not a high crime.
But the extra geographic territory that comes into play to patrol those neighborhoods are going to take more cars on the street to patrol. It's just expanding the workload of the territory they have to cover.
Yeah. Any more questions, comments? Then I guess I'll
move that item.
Oh, Facebook, we have a question?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay.
Rhonda Boer-Greiner, comment to council. I want to thank the Orange County Sheriff's Department for keeping my neighborhood safe. It is a hard job and underappreciated. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Amen to that.
I'll move item number 15.
I'll second.
Okay, vote please.
That motion carries unanimously.
All right, that brings us to our public hearing for the night. I'll open the public hearing. Item 16, consideration of private street names for the Terracina Residential Development Tract 155, I need my glasses, 94, located north and east of the Peachwood Tamarisk Street intersection. And that would be Sackerman?
Yes, I have no additional material to add to the staff report. The City Council approves a list of street names, and we've included those names in the report.
Okay. Do we have any requests from the public?
No, Your Honor.
I'll close the public hearing. And City Council comments or questions?
No, I'll move the item.
Okay, vote please.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Okay, discussion items. Item number 17, advisory ballot measure regarding district elections, submitted by City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Just a very brief presentation. In response to a threat of litigation over the city's process of electing council members at large, on December 19th, 2017, the council adopted an ordinance changing to by-district elections. At the May 1st, 2018 council meeting, the council voted unanimously to place on the ballot a non-binding advisory measure asking for the public's opinion on staying with the by-district election process or returning to a council elected at large. In making the motion to craft the advisory ballot measure, the council focused on the importance of avoiding the potentially high costs of litigation under the CVRA. The council discussed the cost to cities of fighting CVRA lawsuits and expressed its intent to avoid such costs. The City Council requested a draft, non-binding advisory measure that would note the costs of CVRA litigation and ask if the electorate wants to move back to at-large elections in the event the CVRA, as the council put it, loses in court, thereby enabling the city to have at-large elections without fear of litigation and financial exposure under the CVRA. In response to council's direction, we have drafted proposed language for the council's review that is up on the screen. Also, there's a handout on the dais for each of the council members. This language can be amended as the council sees fit, but must stay within the 75-word limit mandated by the Elections Code. And I will note, as a former college writing instructor, this is difficult language. To fit everything the council wanted in 75 words, it's difficult. It requires commas and semicolons. But the council is certainly able to make any changes. I believe we're at 70 words right now. That's because words like City of Lake Forest count as one word under the Elections Code, which puts us in a better place. But that said, that concludes staff's presentation. Once the council lands on language they can agree upon, and if this is the process the council wants to proceed with, we would return at a subsequent meeting with a resolution, including the official ballot measure language for the council to adopt and officially put this on the November election. Happy to answer any questions. That concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comments?
Yes, Your Honor. Randy Johnson.
Okay. It's a trifecta. Welcome back.
You bet. You hate to have me up here, don't you, Mr. Gardner?
No, I love,
you do.
I love to have you.
I know. Anyway, you know how I feel about this one. You know how ironic it is. I'm standing here arguing with my politicians for my votes on primary election day. I'm outraged that 3 members of the council, Basil, Gardner, and Robinson, a simple majority, drove a stake through the heart of democracy by stealing 4 of 5 council votes from 45,000 voters in the city of Lake Forest without giving the voters the right to make that decision on their own. To add insult to injury, by doing so, the council members greatly benefited themselves, since now you don't have to run against the best and brightest in the city of Lake Forest for re-elections. Your competitors will be limited to a small sector of the city where you reside, which could theoretically be 0. All you need to do is please the majority of 9,000 or so voters in your particular district, and you're guaranteed another term. You could vote to put a 100-bed homeless shelter in another district without any risk of losing a single vote. It's obvious to me that you voted for district elections to secure and further your own political careers, not to benefit the residents. The non-binding vote is meaningless. I've never heard of a non-binding vote on an election ballot before. Leah Basil and Jim Gardner had no interest whatsoever in a public vote on district elections until it was announced that Mission Viejo City Council voted unanimously to legally challenge Attorney Shankman in district elections. Councilman Hamilton motioned to put it on the recall ballot in January. Gardner and Basil and Robinson shot it down. Then once Mission Viejo decided to fight Shankman out of fear of political repercussions, Leah Basil suddenly motioned to put the non-binding vote on the ballot as a little insurance policy in the event that Mission Viejo prevails. Basically, a non-binding vote tells the Lake Forest citizens we're too stupid to make our own decisions when it comes to our money and votes. Incredibly tyrannical, arrogant, and insulting. And with regard to this language, it's all one-sided. There's nothing in this language at all about you taking 4 of our 5 votes away from us. Nothing at all. It doesn't even explain what district elections are. And it doesn't mention that the demographer, okay, that you hired with thousands of our money said that we're not a racially polarized voting community. You ignored him. You totally ignored him and went ahead with district elections anyway. So this is a wobbler. We're not like Anaheim. We're not like Palmdale. Demographically, we're completely different from those cities. Completely different. And yet you ignore those facts, and all you put in this language that has just been read by this attorney, it's going to cost us so much money, and we're going to pay all this money if we lose the case. You know, why don't you put something that benefits the voters here, instead of just saying you're going to be punished for
your comments. Anybody else?
Not here, Your Honor, but...
Facebook? No? Talking about Mission Viejo and those people who are fighting the CVRA, which, as a matter of fact, has never lost. Schenkman has never lost. That's the man who's threatening to sue us. What is the current? I notice in the language here you have the Palmdale, the old ones, but what is the recent? Has anybody beaten him since we've done this? And what's it costing those cities that are fighting Schenkman?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, Council. There are, to my knowledge, there are 3 active cases. Those include Mission Viejo, Santa Monica, and Santa Clara in Northern California. The Mission Viejo litigation is not, I mean, it's active in that they have been sued by Mr. Schenkman. They are in negotiations, trying to figure out if there's a way for them to settle that. But that's just now started. The Santa Monica lawsuit has been going on for quite some time. That has seen motions go to the California Supreme Court. To date, the city has not won those motions. There's what's called a motion for summary judgment that's pending that will be heard within the next 2 or so weeks, June 13th or 14th, that the city hopes is dispositive of the case. If it's similar to their previous motion, regardless of outcome, it will be appealed all the way up. Those are the cases. No city has won against Mr. Schenkman since we last spoke, or since these lawsuits began.
Do you have any idea what they're spending?
The Mission Viejo case, that's just now started, and there's nothing public there. The Santa Monica case has been covered pretty widely in the LA press. The latest estimates that I've read, well, not estimates, the city has paid their law firm, it's an outside firm, between $4 to $5 million to date. How much of that is towards the CVRA lawsuit is unknown. The estimates are that they've paid between $4 to $5 million to litigate just that case. That's not, the details aren't public, but that's what's been reported in the press, and that's still an ongoing case.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I'd like to make the motion that maybe that we make this a binding, because the way it's written, the way it's written here, it's if the CVRA is defeated, that we would consider putting it back on. But I think that if a lawsuit is beaten back by a city, I think we should have asked people of Lake Forest that instead of making it a question, making it a binding, to where if a city is able to defeat this, or a collaborative of cities beat this back, I think that we go back to I'll go to at-large elections for the city. So could we do that and just turn this into a binding? Because the way it's written here is kind of saying if.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, this is a non-binding resolution. The council has the prerogative to put on the ballot a binding or a non-binding resolution. That's entirely council's prerogative.
So it would be, it shall, if CVRA, that we would be, it shall go back to.
To make this a binding resolution, we would have to change certain words like should to shall, for example. I think we want to be a bit, we want to look carefully at the language, but should, we'd start there. We'd start changing should to shall, for example.
Do we have any estimates on how much this will cost to put on the ballot? What would that be?
I believe it was $8,500.
See, if we're $8,500 to put it on the ballot and not get anything out of it, because it's a kind of a question, a hypothetical question, you know, then we come back to and we'll discuss it again. But the fact that if the citizens speak out, if we're putting it on the ballot for $8,500, then make it binding that the citizens have spoken.
Yeah, there's a little wisdom in that. I have two fears about that. The first is if the CVRA is successfully challenged, that's a pretty wide berth. And the fact that there are, Schenkman or the CVRA are being sued on different reasons in different lawsuits. So far, he's won them all, but there are, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are different causes of action in this process. So it may be that he's defeated in a cause of action that doesn't necessarily apply to us, and then we're stuck with the interpretation, well, it was defeated in that case, therefore we should do that, but that case doesn't apply to us. So it locks us into doing something that there is no objective criteria for that. Am I correct in that?
Yes, to a certain extent. This is a very important conversation to have. So at the last council meeting, the council's discussion concluded with the desire to have the ballot measure essentially say that if there is no financial and litigation exposure as a result of a successful lawsuit, then the council would go forward. The council's desire 2 weeks ago was to completely, I guess it was more than 2 weeks ago, completely eliminate the financial exposure. The only way to do that, and this is reflected in the ballot measure language, is for a lawsuit to end with a decision that the CVRA is unconstitutional. Right? So the Santa Monica case, for example, the Mission Viejo case, as an example, those are fact-specific cases, right? The Poway case is a case challenging the CVRA's constitutionality, and that holding would apply across the board. Now, this language says if the CVRA is successfully challenged in court, permitting the city to change back without threat of CVRA litigation and financial exposure. That's the operative language.
So that language to you, and this is why I need to ask you, so this language for you actually means something specific rather than, for example, Mission Viejo is going to try cumulative voting, and that might succeed, but I don't want to be held to cumulative voting. So this has an actual meaning.
That has an actual meaning, which is if there is no threat, without threat of litigation and financial exposure, then we transition back to at-large. And what that means is that if, for example, the Poway case, if the plaintiff there were to be successful in that case, that would apply to all cities, whereas the Santa Monica case would be specific to Santa Monica. Mission Viejo would be fact-specific to Mission Viejo.
So on that subject, the Mission Viejo one is challenging it on a not being able to reach minority districts in the numbers they need to qualify to force them to district elections. But the fact that Lake Forest also doesn't fall into that category because the highest ratio we have is, I think, 22%, which is District 5. So that's under the 20.
No, it's actually District 5 is 47%.
No, it's 22. 22. It's 22%.
I think it's 47. Anyhow, that alleviates, since that has a meaning that I'm unaware of, that alleviates my concern. The other concern I have is something that Mr. Johnson talked about, and that is that by itself, a lot of people aren't going to understand this. So isn't there sometimes when you have a thing that's like the pro and the con, somebody writes a paragraph, or this is a good thing to do because of this, and this is a bad thing to do because of this.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Johnson alluded to this. This to a layperson, even to a non-layperson, this is difficult language. And if you don't understand the CVRA and all these issues, without those types of guideposts, it's going to be difficult to understand. But yes, there are things like the attorney's impartial analysis that are required, the arguments in favor, the arguments against, that all go into the ballot, so that voter can
add those things.
Read and analyze. Yeah, so the resolution, if this comes back to the council, would include the requirement that there be dates set by the clerk for the impartial analysis, for the arguments in favor and against to be made.
So would that analysis cost extra to the publishing of the ballots for us? I mean, more pages.
That's all included in the registrar's estimate of $8,500. That's correct?
All right, so I'm happy with that. Those were the only two things I was concerned about, and I have no problem.
I think that, if we're so specific to this, then just make this a binding vote by the citizens of Lake Forest.
Let's see if there's any more discussion, but then you can make the motion, and I'm happy to support it.
I have some questions. The first one, for the pros and the cons, that's going to be in the voter guide. Who's going to be writing that?
Well, that depends. Depends on who wants to write it. The only argument that is mandated by the Elections Code is the city attorney's argument. Not argument, but the impartial analysis. But the arguments in favor and against can be written by any proponent, opponent, including council members.
Now, how would you go about doing that? Are residents allowed to petition to be able to write this? Or?
Yes, so there will be language in the resolution that arises from the Elections Code that will give direction for how to submit those arguments, and they'll be submitted to the city clerk.
Okay. And just also on a side note, I have on several occasions during public council meetings, I have mentioned that I wanted this to become a ballot initiative because I think it's important for the residents to be able to have a voice. The biggest concern is always the cost, and I'm not a gambling person. I don't really like Vegas, so I especially don't like the idea of gambling voter dollars, for something. I really like, the language is very difficult. I understand the spirit of it, and I like that, it does outline, it gives a synopsis for people who don't even know that district elections have happened. So it gives a, kind of a top-line view. And if we're going to be doing a pros and cons section as well, which will really clear up any questions, I think that's great. I do like the idea of changing the word to shall, because to make it quote-unquote binding throws us in the threat of litigation again. So the way that we're writing it is, in the event that the CVRA is proven invalid, then we will switch back. In that sense, I completely agree. It needs to be for the council to understand that if the CVRA is nullified, then we have a fiduciary responsibility to honor the residents' request. If they vote that they do not want districts, then we need to really honor that request from them. But to put it in the language, I don't know how we can do that without running into litigation.
No, we're not going to run into litigation because we're going to say if it's found unconstitutional, then there's no litigation.
As long as that's the case, that we as the council need to understand that we need to respect the wishes of the voters if they vote that they don't want districts, that if it becomes invalid, that we have to, I think we should be responsible and switch.
I think that it says in the paragraph, if the CVR is successfully challenged in court, permitting the city of Lake Forest to challenge back at-large city council elections without a threat of CVR litigation, financial exposure should the city return to at-large elections.
And we just said the city shall.
That's be the shall.
Yeah, shall the
city.
Shall the city return.
Shall the city return.
So just change should to shall.
And yeah, I think that's the key difference. To turn a non-binding resolution or measure into a binding measure, while much of the same principles or many of the same principles apply, that there are some differences. So if that's where the council is going to go, and there's certainly a vote that has to take place, what I would like to do is take this language, bring it back with the resolution, again, if that's council's prerogative, and then we can discuss that binding language, which will include more significant revisions than just should to shall at that subsequent meeting.
Okay, so
Again, that's council's
my motion would be that that you take this back. My motion would be that you take this back and then make this, retool this into a binding resolution that would limit the liability on the city of Lake Forest, but bring it back to us, and that we will then go over the resolution or the ballot measure.
Just so I can clarify, when you say limit the liability, the intention that I've heard from the conversation is if a court finds that the CVRA is, for example, unconstitutional, and therefore there is no financial exposure or threat of litigation under the CVRA, then we would transition back. Is that the intent of the council?
That's broad spectrum, but I look at it as Mission Viejo, a likened city to us, to where they're trying to gerrymander districts to make it fit into the requirements of the CVR, and they're saying they can't do it. And so, I mean, I don't feel that we successfully complete that chore neither.
Well, so you have a motion, you're going to make a motion that we instruct the city attorney to come back to us with language which makes it binding.
Yeah, that would be my motion.
I'll second that. Do you have a discussion?
I just haven't had a chance to talk on the item at all. So I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing here. I've said from the beginning that my only reason for voting for the districts was the potential litigation exposure and the cost that we'd have to spend, what we'd have to spend. So if we don't have to spend anything because it's successfully challenged in court, then absolutely, I think that it needs to be repealed. And if we wanted to have it binding, I have no problem with that. I don't think that it's necessary. How this is written, I'm not really sure how we're going to be confident that there'd be no threat of CVRA litigation or financial exposure, because each city is going to be a little different than another. So unless the claim was the exact same that they were trying to make and it just got tossed, I mean, they could try to find a way to just creatively sue us, right? And so to say that there would be no threat of CVRA litigation or financial exposure, I mean, now we're having to make a judgment call about whether that would happen or not, because as soon as we repeal, then maybe we get sued, right? And then what happens? Because we'd be waiting for that next election, so maybe there's a TRO on our elections or something like that. I don't know, based on the language here. The thing that the direction that I would prefer that we went, and I alluded to this, I think, at the end of our last meeting, is I would like to get direction from the residents as to whether or not they want us to spend money to fight this. That's what is most interesting to me at this point. I want them to understand that there is the potential that it could be millions of dollars. Some people might not like that, but I think that it's important for them to make a decision, eyes wide open, that yes, maybe we don't want district elections, maybe we do. If we're going to fight the district elections, are we willing to spend millions of dollars to do it? I don't like district elections, but I personally was not comfortable taking a vote to spend potentially millions of dollars of taxpayer money to fight it. But if the residents tell me that they are, I'll do what the residents say. So that's what I would prefer that the ballot measure said. This, to me, is just a no-brainer. I don't need a ballot measure to tell me this. If it's successfully challenged in court and we have no, exposure financially or in litigation,
so
I think it would be ridiculous for us not to repeal it.
Would you like to make a substitute motion and say that you want this to be a binding challenge to CVRC or CVRA if the people want us to challenge it?
That's the motion that I'm going to make here. So that's my motion is to craft a ballot measure asking the residents, are they willing to spend upwards of a few $1 million. I don't know what an exact number would be, so you'd have to come to us with some sort of range there, so to challenge district elections. That's what I really want to know. I feel like I already know the answer to this. Not to say that people might not say they want district elections. It's possible that district elections could pass, but I think that they want the ability to make that decision themselves. Right now, it's been forced upon them, right? So if this is successfully challenged, then I think that's what residents would want. They'd want us to repeal it, and then residents would have the decision whether or not to put districts on the ballot. They could do that, or they could come to the public comment mic here and say, put districts on the ballot, right, for us to vote for, yes or no. But right now, they haven't had that opportunity just because of the threat of litigation. We've moved forward. I know some people are very unhappy with that decision. Some people are happy with it. Personally, like I said, I was not supportive of it in any way, but I just don't want to spend millions of dollars. But it's possible that 50% plus one do.
So I will second his substitute motion.
And again, the key word there is potential. I understand. It's possible that we could say we're not going to do it and then never get sued and we spend zero. Or we could get sued and then they back down after we spend hundreds of thousands. Or we could end up spending millions. But I need to know from residents what's kind of the upward limit. And it's difficult because we can't just check boxes here. 70% say yes, $100,000 or less, I'm willing to spend that.
Right.
57% say over $1 million. Or we can't craft a ballot measure that way. I wish I knew where the 50% plus one was, what that dollar amount was, and I'd say, okay, well, they're saying they're willing to spend up to X fighting it. But yeah, I don't have that, so that's what makes it challenging. But so I hope that's clear. I mean,
I think it is. If I can just repeat your motion as I've understood it, for purposes of discussion. So your motion is for staff to craft a measure that will ask the residents if they are willing to spend upwards of a few $1 million, with me tasked coming back with a range for the ballot measure to challenge district elections. That's the motion. Okay.
Yep, and it's an up to, so they understand that it's here's a range that you could spend up to,
and just for clarification, so at the last meeting there was lots of discussion, and this language is taken from that discussion about incorporating examples, Palmdale, Anaheim, et cetera. If this motion passes, this would be a very simple binding ballot measure with the language as articulated.
Yep, that's
thank you.
Because like I said, and if this doesn't pass, and then all of this happens, I still think we have to repeal it. It wouldn't be a ballot measure. Because we're not going to have two here unless someone proposes that. But, that's pretty straightforward to me. This is exactly what we should do if it gets successfully challenged. I don't need voters to tell me that. So,
I have a question. By the way, I had mentioned that last year when we were going through the whole demographics that we should be asking the residents what they want. So I think I agree with you. I think that if the residents say they don't want it, that's the one thing I haven't liked about this as well, is that the voters didn't get to decide. I have had countless conversations with my husband, who is vehemently opposed to district elections, and we fight the devil's advocate arguments all the time over this, and it's come up for a solid year about this very thing. So the truth is I think the voters should ultimately decide whether or not I agree or disagree. I'm only one vote. But my question is, if we were to put it on the ballot as Councilman Robinson is suggesting, would that open us up to Shankman turning around and issuing us suing us because he's worried that we're about to switch back, or what's that look like?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mr. Mayor, Council. There could not be a suit until it was ripe, and it wouldn't be ripe until A, the voters approved the measure, and B, we moved away from district elections. There will be 2 or 3 council members elected by district in 2018. This doesn't change that.
Right.
And so we remain in the safe harbor until, if this were to pass, it would likely go into effect again in 2020. So we would be safe from a lawsuit from Shankman. Again, it wouldn't be ripe until this is passed.
Yeah, I think you're being less than sincere, because you have voted on several occasions to do something that the majority of the people wanted done or didn't want done. So, and I think that's, part of their trust in us or electing us is because they don't have all the information on many things. Sometimes we make a decision that may not necessarily be the popular decision. I like to think that every time I make a decision, it's the decision that the majority of the people want me to make, but the majority of the people don't have all the information that we have when we're making decisions. So sometimes we make decisions which, although they're unpopular, they're decisions that we make because based on the facts that we have in front of us. So I think your idea here probably, should have been proposed a long time ago. I can't personally, it doesn't matter to me if half the people in Lake Forest want me to spend $10 million to fight this thing. I'm not going to spend $10 million of city money to fight that. So, I don't think that's a relevant issue. I'm worried if we don't, if we go that route. You're saying Shankman can't sue us?
Well,
of course he can sue us, but meaningfully.
Sue us. It would be odd to have a lawsuit anticipating what the voters might do. Now, there certainly could be a challenge based on the ballot measure language. That can happen. But for him to sue us for moving away from this style of elections before the voters have even voted would be very odd.
Well, I don't even know how you would craft that. In other words, is that multiple choice? Are you willing to spend up to $1 million or $2 million or $3 million? What do they suggest? And is that a motion that you want instead of this or in addition to this? Because I could see that we could have 2 motions. I mean, they could both be there. The one says, shall we switch? If we can do it for free, you're adding a completely different topic, which is, okay, we can't do it for free. How much you want me to spend? So that's, I don't see them as incompatible. I could see them both being there, but I don't know how you craft. I suppose that would be your problem, to craft what he's suggesting.
Mr. Mayor, Council, the only way to craft this to enable the city to proceed regardless of the amount is to have it be an open-ended amount, right? To have some general term like several millions, but make it clear that the council isn't capped in their ability to spend money. The worst case would be if the voters said, yeah, we'd like the council to fight this. We get in litigation and we've said $3 million in the ballot measure, we hit $3 million and we're done, because that's binding. So it would have to be open-ended in terms of the amount. But if the council's desire is to make it clear that this could be an expensive proposition, we'd want to craft language to make that clear.
All right, and is the second motion, that doesn't necessarily, it's really not a substitute motion, it's a separate issue altogether. I'm asking you, not him.
Well, it just depends on how Mr. Robinson wants to frame this. It could be a substitute motion. If that's his desire, it could be a second measure on the ballot.
So your preference to have 2, or you just want this one?
Okay, well, let me just address something first, and then I'll get to that. I understand that we make decisions up here all the time that might not necessarily be the majority's thought on something. We don't know because not everyone voted on that item in the city, but we may be able to intuit at times that we're voting for something that's a little less popular than the majority would want. I agree with that. I think that I've been pretty consistent in saying that when it comes to what we do up here, the residents are our bosses. They're the ones that should be deciding how many of us there are, whether we have term limits or not, how much we make, what our pay is, whether we have districts. I've always felt that way. I feel like I've been consistent, but if I've been inconsistent, I would appreciate someone pointing that out to me at some point. So I don't feel like I'm being insincere in any way. I can appreciate the fact that I should have brought this up earlier, and I wish that I had, and I tried to just briefly address it at the last meeting, and then the city attorney said we'd have this opportunity here. I don't know that it could have ended up on a ballot any quicker. Maybe we could have had it on the ballot today, or maybe we could have had it on the recall ballot in January, but I still probably would have pushed for a November election, just because that's when the vast majority of Lake Forest voters actually vote. My preference would be in a presidential election, because that's when you get the most, but it's November elections probably make the most sense to get good feedback from the largest portion of Lake Forest residents. With that said, it doesn't have to be a substitute motion. It can be a separate motion. I'm not going to support the ballot measure here, not because I don't support the concept. To me, it's a no-brainer. I don't see the value in putting this on the ballot. If it's successfully challenged in court and we see no threat of CVRA litigation or financial exposure, then I'll make the motion that we repeal. I don't need the voters' feedback. I don't need to spend $8,500 to figure that out at this point. At that time, like I said, the voters could decide, yes, we want to have the chance to vote on it, and then now they want to put district elections on the ballot, right, and then vote up and down. I could see some people saying yes to this and yes to districts, as weird as that sounds.
Yes.
So I could see that happening, because they just say, I want the right to be able to, for some self-determination here, right? I want to be able to decide whether or not we're going to have districts. I don't want it, crammed down my throat. So, I could understand that part. But to me, this is irrelevant. It's not necessary. So I would prefer the other motion. But like I said, they can be two separate ones. I'll be voting no on this one.
All right, well, let's treat them as two separate motions, since they're not substitute motions. And then let's go ahead with the first motion, unless we have more discussion.
I just feel it's fundamentally wrong that up until 2016, we, as the city of Lake Forest, the residents, were able to vote for either 2 city councilmen or 3 on opposite election cycles. But the fact that us being segmented into compartments of a city, I think it fractions the value of us as being a city as whole. I mean, as much as I love Portola Hills and Foothill Ranch, I don't think that we take the same emphasis as a council member or a resident when you're looking at compartmentalizing where you live and who you vote for. So I think it's wrong, but the fact is there has been litigation already lost to this, but I'm willing to say that because of the demographics of our city and the right for the citizens to speak, that it should be ultimately the citizens who tell us fight or not fight, because the fact is, as much as I don't like districts, the fact is that people tell me that they don't mind it, and this will be an election cycle where 2/3 of the city are not voting for a council member, and the other 3/5 of them are. I think that it will be a good testing to where something will be said. So I think that this one right here, that we have this ballot initiative here, really says nothing to us, because why even put this on the ballot? I mean, we're asking a question that's a hypothetical, but the fact that if the CVR, the California Voting Rights Act, is defeated, it should be a no-brainer that we go back to elections. So I think that what we're saying in all is whether you want us to, do you want us to be challenged? Do you want the city of Lake Forest to challenge the rights of us as citizens to vote?
You know, personally, it's not a no-brainer, and it is. We live in a representative democracy. We don't live in a direct democracy. It's interesting that I don't know if nobody here goes to civics classes or not, but you know, our districts, our supervisors are elected by district. We don't vote for every supervisor. We have 5 supervisors. They're voted by district. Guess what? Our representatives, how are they elected? Do we vote for every representative? They're elected by district. How about the U.S. representative? How is she elected?
But I
by
think that's by
district.
states. By state.
No, she's elected by district.
U.S.
Choi Mimi is a district. Choi is a district.
But that was the way the
Morlock is a
Constitution drafted
district.
that.
But Bartlett is a district. Most of the voting we do is by district. There's nothing funny about voting by district. So I don't think it's a no-brainer. Secondly, one of the reasons, there are 2 main reasons to go to by districts, and which is why I'm in favor of districts. And to me, it's a no-brainer. Why is it a no-brainer? Because it makes you, as a councilman, more accountable to the people who you represent. Right now, some of us are doing work for everybody, and some of us are doing work for very few people. When you have a district, you go to, Dwight Robinson, can you help me? That's my district. So it makes you, Dwight isn't helping me or is helping me. God bless Dwight, I'm going to support him, and et cetera. So going to districts will make us all, I believe, better councilmen and better representative to our district. Secondly, and the other major reason to go to districts is, and it's interesting to me, the 2 people who think it's a no-brainer are the 2 people who take special interest money. And they take special interest money, which is tens of thousands of dollars.
How do you call that special interest money when it is campaign donations? It's not special interest. I've never changed my vote for $1 in my whole life.
And yet you've never voted contrary to anybody who gave you money.
I have.
Ever.
Waste management. I voted against waste management.
Because CR&R gives you money. In any event, when you take money from developers and special interests, you are able to mount a campaign on a citywide basis because, quite frankly, campaigning on a citywide basis is expensive. It can cost $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000. If we go to districts, then an ordinary person who's a part of that community and meaningfully contributes to those people with very little money could compete in that district. And so that's important. To me, that means the average person can get elected because they're doing a good job, not because they're taking money from developers and people with contracts for the city. So I believe it's a no-brainer to go to districts, although you guys don't believe it because you guys are at an advantage because you take that money. Therefore, I think that first one, it is important to know what the people think. And it is important to put those issues in front of them and to find out, what they think. And then we can go ahead. Yeah, I don't think it has to be binding because if 70% of the people wanted us to go citywide, we'd be crazy not to. But I don't mind making it binding either. But I think it's important for us to know if we have the latitude, because your suggestion might be defeated. People might not be willing to spend $5 million like Santa Monica to do it, but they might want us to do it. So, I think both of those issues are important. It's important to know that are people prepared to spend $5 million, your motion, or not? Or the other, if we don't have to spend any, shall we switch back? I think they're both important to know. So I would support both of them.
I agree. I support both of them. Because the truth is there might be people out there that say, if it doesn't cost us anything, then I'm fully supportive of districting. But if it's going to cost us $7 million to fight it, then I'm not in support of it. So the people need to ask. We need to ask the people, is that what they want? Is it okay if it's free and it's not okay if it's going to cost us, $5-10 million?
Yeah, so, let's treat them as 2 separate ones. The first motion is Mr. Voigt's motion, which is for you to come back to us with a crafted, binding motion.
Just a procedural technicality, if we could take the second motion first, because that's what Robert's Rules dictates, and that's the council's approach.
Second motion is to, how do you want to craft it?
However you have it crafted.
Okay, so this is a binding ballot measure.
Yep.
Craft a measure asking residents if they're willing to spend upwards of several millions of dollars, not capping that, to challenge district elections.
Yep.
Before we go on, I apologize, but we haven't heard from Councilman Cagley, and I don't know if you had anything to say, but I want to make sure you say something.
I'm a little confused about what Mr. Robinson is looking for in one sense. In another sense, I'm not confused about it. I was not here when you, on the council, when you all voted for the districts, and it came up before. I appreciate what Mr. Johnson says about it, but also consider what the mayor says accurate also. We vote for districts, we vote in districts in everything. And from supervisors to congressmen to, I guess, school board members and other things. So I don't have an issue with the districts that Mr. Johnson has and other people have. I'm more concerned about the people of Lake Forest really being educated, interested enough to even take this issue up and vote on it logically. That's all I got to say about it.
Yeah, I think the trick in all of this is what goes with the ballot so that we can adequately explain both sides. And then people will choose one way or the other. But that is the challenge, to get people interested enough that they educate themselves and do it. I believe you're the second on that? Okay. So we have a first and a second. Let's have a vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
And the second one is Councilman Voigt. I believe I seconded.
Seconded the question posed, if it's successfully challenged and poses the risk to the city, that we would go back to citywide elections.
And Mr. Mayor, this is hopefully my last time miking up this evening. If the motion is for a measure that's that simple, and we do have two measures on the ballot, then it's possible to eliminate the first clause in that measure, which begins with understanding, the first word, and ends at the end of the parenthetical at the 1.1 million. Because what we're really asking is, if the CVRA is successfully challenged, do you want us to go away from where we're at right now? Right? Everything else, that preamble is no longer necessary.
That preamble goes in the first motion?
Essentially.
Okay, yeah, sure. Great.
And this is that binding or non-binding?
Binding.
Binding.
Okay. Everybody understand? Okay. Let's vote.
That motion carries with Councilmember Robinson opposed.
Okay, normally we take a break now, so let's take a 10-minute break and come back at 25 minutes to 9. Oh, Robinson voted no, so 4-1. Okay, but that's good. That's good. I think that there's two issues you could, like, I'm not willing to spend $5 million, but I want to. Or take your seats. We'll get started with Part 2. Number 18, review of City Council policies submitted by Director of Management Services.
Mayor, members of the council, we have nothing additional on this item. We're recommending that the council pass the policies as attached to your staff report.
Okay. Any public comments or questions?
Not from the public, Your Honor, but perhaps Facebook.
Facebook Live? Okay. And council, any comments, questions, additions? Nothing. Okay.
I have a question. I have a question. I'm just trying to open my... It's with the city plaques, concerning the plaques in the history of the city. We give it to Eagle Scouts and Gold recipients of the Girl Scout Gold Merit badges, and the Eagle Scouts and commission members and city council members. And so are we going to expand that to dignitaries coming to our city? It said something about, and I apologize for I'm trying to get it open now. Are we expanding that?
No, we didn't change the language
All
there.
right, then I'll move.
Okay. I'll
second.
Let's go ahead. Either way. Vote, please.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 19, landscape and park maintenance services for the Lake Forest Sports Parks, which is in distinction to the Lake Forest Sports Park, which is now, as I understand it, to be called the Lake Forest Sport Complex. Did I get that right?
Thank you, Mayor. That's how we refer to it internally because it just got too confusing with park and parks and everything else going on.
So this is for everything else, not the sports park,
Correct.
but for the sports parks.
Correct. And I believe the city manager would like to kind of kick this item off.
Yes, Mayor and members of the council. Normally, I would not put the maintenance contract for the sports parks on your discussion calendar. The reason we're doing this today is to get your policy direction on the level of maintenance you'd like to see at those parks. So we're at the end of our 5-year contract, and we went out for RFP, and we used the same level of maintenance that we're using at our sports park complex, put that scope of services into this RFP. So for the sports park complex, it increased the annual cost by about 16%. In this case, because you're dealing with 9 parks located throughout the city, the increase was 30% over what you're currently spending. And so we wanted to come back to the council and get your policy direction on, would you like to do that additional investment in this area? Now, during our conversations of the 5-year plan, we talked about how the gap between expenditures and revenues over the next 5 years is getting more narrow as we're bringing the Civic Center complex on board and as we're offering more services. So again, we'd like to ask the council, do you feel that this is a good time to increase your level of maintenance at these 9 sports parks, also keeping in mind that you're going to be adding another sports park when you build Portola Park? So what we're suggesting in the staff report is that the council consider, instead of awarding a contract tonight, directing staff to go back to our current vendor and extend our current contract. Our vendor has agreed to do that with a 5% increase, and have the staff go back out with a new RFP with the higher scope of work and the current scope of work to really identify the incremental cost between what normally would have gone up because it's 5 years later. So, of course, wages have gone up, fuel prices have gone up, and so forth, to capture that increase and compare that to the increase for the new level of maintenance. So we left this recommendation at City Council discretion, but if you were to ask me, I would tell you I would recommend that we extend our current contract and have us go back out and get that cost increment for you and represent it to you to give you an opportunity to decide if you would like to do that additional investment.
And for the people who haven't read the report, could you give us some indication of how much the people are happy or unhappy with the current conditions?
Certainly. Over the last 3 years, we looked through our Ask Lake Forest system. We have about 3 to 5 complaints about the sports parks per year, and they generally are reports of a broken sprinkler, please come pick up dog droppings, we're out of doggy bags, that kind of thing. So it's nothing out of line. It's not a service that pops out as something that we need to invest in. In the last community survey that was done in 2016, residents gave a 90% satisfaction level for the city's efforts to maintain its parks. So those are kind of normally the two things that we look at to get some broader information on how we're doing in a particular service.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public?
No, Your Honor.
Facebook Live, Councilman Voights.
I see in this contract, so this is just like Regency, Foothill, Borrego. Why did we go from 50,000 square feet of sod to 100,000 square feet of sod when I'm on the sports fields a lot because my daughter does play and I'm out there almost year-round. I don't see the need to add an extra 50,000 square foot of sod, and the cost of that would have been a lot right there. So what was the need for that?
That's a great question. Thank you. That and there's an additional scope item also that we did add, which is an additional $50,000 of contingency dollars, right? So we also are out there in the sports fields, and staff felt that based on a lot of the feedback we got last summer when we were going through the new scopes of work, when we're talking through with the PRZ report and all that stuff with the sports complex, that looking the way our fields are being utilized, that we could utilize that extra 50,000 square feet of sod, that there were actually places to do it to, again, enhance the level of maintenance.
Do you have a number on how much that would cost, the 50,000?
We can back that number out based on some of the bid prices that we have. Right? And Mike will work on that right now.
So my suggestion would be that I'm someone out there, and since it was observations for me to kind of start this whole discussion, is that the best practices that we've gone to and the new knowledge that we have as a staff and our crews out there, I think that the care that will be given to the lawns will be increased. I think the enhancement in the quality of the seed that we're putting down with the new types of grass we're going to be using, I think that that's maybe something that is maybe overly, maybe not needed at this time. And then I was looking at that you added over 2,000 or just under 2,000 new plants. Was that something that we saw that as a need to?
Yeah,
from 24 to 41.
And funny things happen when you go out to RFP. So we went from 2,400 plants to 4,100 plants. That price, if you look at the line item, actually is less this time around than the 2,000 plants was. So again, sometimes in both Merchants and Brightview are here tonight, they can explain that. But there are sometimes they move their numbers around a little bit, and I can ask them to explain it in more detail. But I think overall, this scope of work was written back in 2012. It was a long time ago, right? And so as we go through, we have all new staff. I came on board in 2012, so we really take a look every time we redo our RFPs. We take an opportunity to learn, to better address what are the needs out there, how many more plants do we think we need, try to project that and try to learn. So this is a combination of really what the staff and what the inspectors really believe is out there, again, based on the conversations we had last summer and trying to reach that enhanced level of service, and also to have the same levels of service between the complex and the sports parks. I think that was kind of the point, was that's driving some of these costs, right? So is minimum wage increases and other things also. So what level of service do you want? We can always save money. We can always cut things. That's lowering the level of service, right? So when is good enough, and at what price? And those are difficult things to do in a competitive bidding environment or in a proposal process.
So I just saw a lot of extras added. The daily cleaning and blowing, weekly pressure washing, when we used it as weekly pressure or sweeping and blowing, and pressure wash as needed in our parks like Foothill and Borrego. You don't get the kind of usage out there, and I don't think a weekly pressure washing of those sidewalks is needed. And so I think we keep to bring this back in and rein this in a little bit. We kind of maybe up the level because the fact that I know we're adding another park online. Baker Park is now online, which wasn't included in the earlier bids. But I think that I think we just got a little bit carried away with how much we added. We went from 1,645 sprinkler heads to 2,450 sprinkler heads. Prior to that, it was on an as-needed basis. And so I think that you put a rough estimate, and if we go above that, then maybe they could add that into a scope of work on an as-needed basis. But I think that that's a lot of sprinkler heads. I don't think we were getting that many sprinkler heads broken.
This is our best estimate of how many sprinkler heads we will need to replace. I mean, they get thrashed and broken routinely.
So we went from 1,600 to 2,400
over the last 6 years. That's our best estimate. Bringing on Baker Ranch, bringing on Portola. So, and it's an estimate.
And then
right?
and reading in the sports park on the fields at the grass at the sports park, we're doing split aerations by split seeding.
That's what we're proposing to add.
Now, is that an extra cost to us when we have, rather than plugging it, is that an extra cost to have it split?
I'd ask the vendors that. It could be, depending if you own the equipment, it's probably not, then it's the same. If you need to go out and buy new equipment, then that's a capital cost.
I think Brightview, is Brightview here in the audience? Brightview is actually used by Irvine, correct? Or no? Do you guys have the machinery to do aeration by slicing? Yes, we do. Yeah.
That's what they're doing at the sports complex.
Okay, yeah, that's
so this reflects the sports complex. So we've got one consistent scope of work. Okay. So if we want to adjust this is the kind of feedback that we're looking for.
So what I'd make the motion that we go back out to bid, and just knowing that that's a little bit high for what we thought, and so if the vendors are out there, I'm all about the level of play, and I think that the teams and parents and the level of play that we have when the fields are looking nicer, I think it's better for the city. So I'm for that, but
I'll second.
So I'd like to go out to bid and maybe lower the expectation of what our scope of work is going to be, and maybe I can come in and just talk with you guys and see. But yeah.
No, that would be terrific. Any feedback that you have, and so I think the way staff was thinking it was, we have a current scope of work, we have a new scope of work that we're using at the sports complex. We can bid out both those items, right? So you can have some choices. Certainly, any feedback that any council members have about, this is too much or not enough, if you can give that to us, we can go back and craft an RFP, let you know what it is, and that'd be a terrific approach to do.
Any other questions before we vote?
I do have one more question. With the sports park being fertigation now in doing the split aeration, do we have we lowered the expectation of how much sod that we're going to be using for resodding of that? Where did we go from, and where do we go to?
I believe so. The fields are looking pretty good. We will probably still need some.
I knew, but not
some sod. The rains helped, but we haven't had the heat that we need to generate the Bermuda to start growing.
All right.
So that's been a challenge with that.
So we'll talk about that when I make my appointment to come and see you.
Absolutely.
All right.
So we look forward to that. So if that's the thing, we would ask that you authorize the city manager to extend the current contract for up to a year with a 5% increase, so staff has time to go back out, direct staff to do the RFP, generally with the old scope of work with the new one, and then we can compare the two.
Okay. That would be my motion.
For a year or for 6 months? It says 6 months in the staff report.
So the Brightview has made the offer for up to a year, so depending on staff, we'd prefer up to a year to be able to work through these things. We could do it in 6 months. We have other things going on also. But it's a 5% increase, so that is actually your best deal that you have.
That's a very...
So I keep it for as long as we can and move through that. But let staff go back and try to handle it. One of the things we've been talking about is changing our changeover times. There's reasons why we do the fiscal year, obvious budget reasons. There's also some advantages, maybe going mid-year in the winter. So we're not changing out staff at the parks in the important summer renovation time. So we're thinking about that. So it might be in between the two.
So your motion is up to 12 months.
Up to 12 months.
I would like to keep it at 12 months because I actually, is Brightview our service provider now?
So Brightview's our current service provider now.
And if you guys are out there, you guys have done a wonderful job. I look forward to the enhancements, but it's well kept. They don't do the Placid Parks only. That's neat.
Correct. That's Nieves. Right.
Okay, so this is just for our sports complex out there.
No, sports parks.
Sports parks, not
Correct.
sport complex.
Correct.
Is there any need for us to in the future look at fertigation in a smaller system in some of our sports parks?
Let us take a look at that and come back to you.
So that's
what
a
those
question that's going to be on the
opportunities
table. So my motion is that we extend it up to 1 year. Okay.
I'll second it for the third time.
Okay.
Can you second it for the third time? I guess you can. Okay, any more discussion? Okay, vote please.
That motion carries unanimously.
Item number 20, 2018 Purchasing and Contracting Guidelines and Contract Templates, submitted by Assistant City Manager.
Mayor and members of the council, we have a brief report by Assistant City Manager Keith Neves.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight we're, taking our yearly update to the purchasing and contracting guidelines that we use in the city for all purchases and going through contract. So really each year we bring it back to clarify the policies and procedures. We try to improve the ability and the documentation and the procurement process by bringing this back. We also update the RFP and the contract templates, and which are reviewed each year by BBK to ensure any compliance with current state law or legislation changes. Those are the two most common things. We bring these back every year to update and to make sure we're meeting state law and everything. On this one, we're bringing back a couple other things. We're asking you to increase the city manager authority from $30,000 to $50,000. That hasn't been changed since probably 1999. And as you read in Table 2 on the report, it only represents a decrease. It represents a 28% decrease in contracts that would be coming to the City Council, but there's only a decrease of 1.5% of the financial commitment. So it's a very small percentage of financial commitment that you would not be seeing if you increase this from 30 to 50,000. Now, increasing that from 30 to 50,000, it's 50,000 per year over 3 years, so 50, 50, 50 for each year. No one could spend above and beyond that 50 for each of those years. So if she signed a 3-year contract for 150,000, a department couldn't spend all that 150,000 in the first year. They could only spend 50,000 for each year after that. So that's one of the changes we're asking. The second change
Do you want questions as you go along, or do you want us to wait till the end?
We could probably go through questions since this is the last item as we go along.
Okay, anybody have any questions on that?
Any questions on the increase to city manager's purchasing? Okay. The second thing...
You want us to vote each time? Or
No, we can vote on it all at the end.
So hold on. So right now it's $30,000 up to 3 years in a row. So our multi-year.
Currently, the city manager has the authority to sign for $30,000 or less.
$30,000 for every year for 3
No,
years?
she can just sign for $30,000 for if the RFP is less than $30,000, she can sign the contract for it. But it can't go. It's not a multi-year. We're also adding the multi-year to this.
So why are we adding the multi-year to that? So is that something that shouldn't come back to us as a council if it's going to be a multi-year contract?
We were looking at the percentages and showing you that it was a very small reduction in the financial percentage that you guys were going to approve each year. So we figured it would relieve us of some of the more basic operational contracts in the city. And if you see on the staff report, printing services, graphic design services, banking services, ADP payroll services, those types of contracts we would not be bringing back to you. Those would be under her authority now.
Yeah, I like the idea, but I also wouldn't mind having like an addendum or something, just so that we know what's going on, even though you're doing it, so that, or actually what I'd like better than that is before you do it. Like, these are coming up and that's what you're going to do, so that if one of us has a issue of why didn't you use that Lake Forest printer or something like that? We could look at it. Otherwise, I like the idea. You don't like the idea of doing it before, I know. But you'll do it if we want you to, won't you?
Yeah, of course. I'll do it happily if directed. But I think the whole point of this is that we're trying to alleviate the need for you to get involved in the really mundane kind of stuff. And so if you still have this obligation to pre-review it, then don't change the signing authority and just have it come back to you as a council. Because it also doesn't help me if, well, only 2 of you have an issue with it, the 3 don't, and so then there's 2 that feel like, well, you know, it's still, either you're going to give the ability for me to sign it or you're not, is kind of how I look at it.
It's not an issue of trust with you. It's just an issue of, it's the city's money, and, you know, I think of it, it's like my money, and I just want to know where it's going rather than, you know, it's like free, and I don't know. It just seems like it's my responsibility. Am I being overly,
Your Honor.
Yeah.
Personally, I agree. I think it should be increased to 50,000. I think if it's been that way for 20 years, that's way behind the power curve you'd find.
Oh, I'm happy with increasing it.
And I think, like State Manager said, to avoid us getting down in the weeds, is to save us time, the staff time, and others' time, so I'm all for it.
Well, okay. Why don't you give us the information, and I'll scan it. If it looks like, you know, we go 6 months and I'm happy, then I'll never talk about it again. But if things keep coming up, then I'll ask you to go beforehand.
Okay, that's fair.
All right.
Yeah, we can put that in the CM update. We can give you a report on what I've signed and that.
Yeah, just basic information, just so we've kept apprised of what's going on.
On a side, it's not as though you're just going to be spending the money and we won't know about it. We get the warrant register, we see all of the expenses that go through finance, so it would be in those reports at every city council, you know.
Yeah, but hard in the warrant register sometimes to figure out what's that going for. At least for me. I don't know about the rest of you, but you see the check and what did that go for? And so, sometimes I ask the question, what is this? So this way I'd at least be on that. Okay. You're happy, I'm happy. Great.
Okay, moving forward, we've had we've changed the proposal on the template on how we score the RFPs, and the council has asked questions over probably the last 12 months on how did you come up with the scoring in the RFP? How did you pick maybe the vendor with the higher dollar amount and the higher score, or the lower score but the lower dollar amount? So we've implemented some more procedures and processes in that, and we brought pricing into it. So pricing will become part of this, part of the overall scoring. So that's the change on the template on that. So we've kind of brought pricing in, and then we're going to use a weighted average on scoring, which I think will it'll put more data into the scoring and take the more human nature out of the scoring. So you'll see it a little bit more. So we have that change. And then the last change is we're trying to get your, for a local preference policy. City Council has asked us to bring this back up. So we're trying to find direction on implementation of a local preference policy. So we gave you a little bit of information in this, and we've kind of showed you certain things in here, but it's really, a local preference policy really is limited to purchases of supplies of equipment. And we're looking for direction from the City Council. Do you want us to do more research and bring you back a policy on local preferences, of purchasing on local preferences? So that's what we're trying to ask the Council right now on that item.
If you did more research, what more would you bring back?
Well, we'd bring back a policy for you to be able to vote on. So whether you'd want to implement it or not implement it. So we'd bring you a draft ordinance, basically.
Yeah, probably, put Lake Forest first. I believe we should be doing that.
So if you see in the staff report under the table, you show, Irvine has a local preference policy, Laguna Niguel, Mission Viejo, and really they're very small and probably used very rarely because it's operational supplies and equipment purchases, and some of them have up to a dollar amount. So what we bring you back into policy is we do our research, come back with a policy on something like that, and then put it in front of you.
So are you looking for a vote tonight whether or not you should take that extra
Yes,
step?
yes.
Okay. So I'll make the motion that we ask you to come back to us with an ordinance that would reflect, to the extent that we can do it. Okay. So, any questions, comments?
Is the motion for the whole item?
We can do a motion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can, well, actually,
Just want to make sure we're being consistent.
No, I was just doing it for
this
item.
motion is, do this motion for bring it back the local preference. And then we're going to need to do another motion for the whole item because there's an ordinance change.
Right, so just for that item. We have a first and a second. Let's vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay.
And then you need to vote again to introduce the first reading of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lake Forest, California, amending the Lake Forest Municipal Code Sections 3.12.120, 3.12.140, and 3.12.165 concerning the purchase of goods and non-professional services. And that is increasing the city manager's signing authority from the $30,000 to $50,000.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Well, we're going to, and approve the revised request for proposed template, substantial in the form attached, approve the standard form contract templates substantially in the form attached. And guidelines as a whole.
Make a motion to accept staff recommendations.
You got any more to add
Sounds
before
good.
we vote?
I'll make a motion that we accept those staff recommendations.
I thought we were about to watch a football game, 24-36. Hot.
Okay, vote.
I need a second.
Oh, she said.
Oh, a second.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, city manager's report.
I have nothing further other than to wish Councilmember Cagley a happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
It's his birthday.
At my age, we quit counting them.
And council comments, we can start with Councilman Cagley.
Well, thank you, City Manager, and the rest of you for recognizing my birthday. It is kind of amazing I got this far along in life without getting shot or something. I do want to comment on one thing. Earlier on, we were talking about the going out to the people for a ballot measure. It's so frustrating. I know I'm preaching to a choir here. We have so few people who actually come here all the time to listen to us. Last Monday at the ceremony at the El Toro Cemetery, I went to where my wife is, and she had two guests in the room with her. I was still in my uniform. Asked why I was in my uniform. I said, well, I just gave a keynote speech at the annual Memorial Day service. This one woman whose late husband was 27-year veteran of the Air Force, has lived in Lake Forest since 1991, said, I've never heard that before. Is that brand new? I think it's their 29th year. The point being, gosh, there's so many people out there, we just don't know what's going on sometimes. I don't mean that ugly at all. They're so busy in their lives, particularly have young children. They're just going from pillar to post. We need to find some way, if we're going to go with this thing and make it sincerely an effort, we got to let these people know what's the vote's about, and to bring them into full knowledge of it. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I just thought I had to say it. Thank you.
Councilman Robinson?
Just briefly, regarding the parade, I didn't feel like this was appropriate for the road closure part, but I just wanted to bring up to Public Works. It seems like the last couple of years, the trash cans have been getting removed like as soon as the parade route's over, and then I see people standing around trying to throw trash away somewhere, and they're holding lawn chairs and some trash. Maybe they're dropping it because of that. So I just think if those could stick around a little bit longer, people would really appreciate that. Then I have a request for consensus to agendize an item. I'd like to discuss potentially renaming a street on right off of Bake Parkway. It's Cape May, and we have a couple of businesses in that area, and I think something art related might be of benefit. That's where Majeska Theater is, and also the Wine Artist. And it's not a street where anyone has an actual address for that street. It's just more directional. And so just like to have a discussion about that. So I request at least one person.
Yeah, okay. Nice idea.
Okay, thanks.
Councilman Voights?
Thank you. Colonel Cagley did a wonderful time at the Memorial Day observation at El Toro Memorial Park. It was the 29th annual. It's a good time for us to come out and remind each other that freedom's not free. So thank you for the wonderful topic, and thank you for your participation. Thank you for your service. And I attended this last Friday the memorial for candlelight service for Orange County police officers. 54 have died since 1912. It's a tribute to all the officers who have served here in Orange County, and a remembrance for those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. And Orange County Sheriff Department has given the lives of 2 here in Lake Forest. And I was fortunate to know Brad Ritchie's myself personally, and been in his garage and helped me make a cigar box. In the fact that whether it be Lake Forest, San Juan Capistrano, or L.A., every night, every day that those men put the badge on and go out, they're actually risking their lives for us. And so I think it's good for us to remember and thank them when we see them out on the street, and for the job well done in keeping us as one of the safest cities in the not only in the county but in the state. So thank you, Lieutenant Valentine, for all you guys do. It was a wonderful service, and they have it every year, and it's a wonderful monument to those who have died in the line of service here in Orange County. So God bless them. I have nothing further. Oh, and I'd like to make a motion for consensus that we adjourn this meeting in the memory of Chris McCullough, if that would be.
Sure. Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem?
So yeah, I also attended the Memorial Day service, and I was surprised to see Tom sitting up there on the bleacher about to give the keynote. Didn't even say anything to any of us. He's just such a quiet warrior. So it was very enjoyable, and it was nice getting to know you in a different way, hearing some of your war stories. Also, regarding OCFA, we had a board meeting a week or 2 ago, and I'll be submitting a report for the city staff for the upcoming council meeting, so I won't go into detail, but it looks like the unfunded pension liability litigation legislation is probably going to pass. So I'm sure we as a city are going to have to take a better look at that as it progresses. The last thing I wanted to mention was I've been hearing some feedback from some residents up in Portola Hills regarding renaming Portola Center Park after the gentleman who lost his life, the construction worker who passed away a few weeks ago. So I was hoping maybe we could put that as an item for consensus. Maybe City Council can talk about maybe renaming that park, and I don't know how anyone feels about that.
Want consensus to bring that up?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you the consensus.
And otherwise, have a good evening.
Okay, yeah, like my other councilman, well, I attended close to 30 events this past month, but my favorite one was Memorial Day, and listening to Colonel Cagley talk. That was just an outstanding presentation. It was really terrific. And Chris was sick, and Chris McCullough, he was always at that event. And so I knew from his absence that the end must be near. And Chris McCullough, for those of you who was a sergeant and always sold the red ribbons around Memorial Day, and a great asset to the city, a great person, and everybody who knew him will miss him, and my sympathies go to Councilwoman and former Mayor McCullough. I'm sure this is a tough time for her. He was a great guy. I think we had some democracy and fiscal responsibility both won the day tonight in our discussions about the districting, and I think we have two good motions going forward on that. I look forward to them. You know, our spouses, and Tom's wife now is sick, and so he doesn't make as many events as he'd like to, and city council, we take the flack, and people get up and they say all the crazy things that they say, et cetera, et cetera. But our families suffer as well, and they take on a lot. And I mean, they participate with us in the ups, but they also participate with us in the downs, and they don't get the terrific salary that we get. But they do otherwise, and it's a real tribute to, he was a great man. Nancy's a great woman. All of our spouses really put up with us, and it's remarkable that they stayed with us through thick and thin, and Chris stayed with, and the two of them stayed together for all those many years. So we'll adjourn in memory of Chris and all he meant to the city and the people who knew him. And thank you. We have some birthday cupcakes left over for those of you who've stayed. See you in 2